A warm and cozy welcome to you. This is a space where we find restful sleep and learn about science. A quick request before we begin. Please lower your device volume now. The main essay is set a little louder than this intro to help balance against any loud videos or ads that might follow and wake you up. I invite you to share in the comments what time it is for you, where in the world you are joining us from, and even what's on your mind tonight. When you return in the morning, your feedback and requests for future topics are welcome. Finally, please know that after our essay, you'll hear extended white noise of actual beach waves from Costa Rica to help keep you asleep. Now, let's get comfortable and begin our exploration into the science of sleep. It begins as a whisper, a subtle shift in the rhythm of your day. The world's sharp edges begin to soften. Thoughts that once raced with purpose now meander, losing their urgency. It's a gentle fog that rolls into the landscape of your mind, a quiet invitation to surrender. Your eyelids grow heavy, each blink lasting a fraction longer than the one before. Your very breathing deepens, slowing from the clipped cadence of the day into the long tidal rhythm of the night. This is the call to sleep, an ancient, irresistible pull we have answered every day for our entire existence. But is this call unique to us? Is this profound state of surrender a purely human experience? To begin to understand sleep, we must first look beyond ourselves and into the wider animal kingdom. There we find that the need for sleep is a biological law, as fundamental as breathing or eating. Consider the dolphin, an animal that must surface to breathe and remain ever vigilant for predators in the open ocean. To stop and become unconscious would be a death sentence. Evolution's solution is a marvel of efficiency. Dolphins sleep with only half of their brain at a time. This is known as unihemispheric slow-wave sleep. While one hemisphere enters a deep, restorative state, the other remains awake and in control, allowing the dolphin to swim, breathe, and see. After a few hours, they switch, resting the active side. They never fully disconnect from the world, yet they still find a way to achieve the essential functions of sleep. Or look to the sky, to the alpine swift, a bird that can stay aloft for over 200 days without landing. For years, how it slept was a complete mystery. We now know these birds engage in-flight sleep, taking thousands of micro-naps, each lasting just a few seconds, all while soaring thousands of feet in the air. From the lion that can spend 15 hours a day in slumber to the nervous prey animal that takes its rest in short, fitful bursts, the strategies are endlessly diverse. The how of sleep is flexible, but the that of sleep is non-negotiable. Every animal species studied to date, without exception, sleeps. This simple, universal fact forces us to confront the central mystery. For a state that seems so unproductive, so dangerous, evolution has guarded it jealously for hundreds of millions of years. This brings us back to ourselves and to our own history of trying to understand this nightly surrender. For most of human history, sleep was not seen as a biological process to be studied, but as a void to be feared. The ancient Greeks personified it as Hypnos, the god of sleep, and his brother Thanatos, the god of death. The two were often depicted together, suggesting a deep, primordial link between sleep and oblivion. It was seen as a little death, a temporary departure of the soul from the body, a state of absolute vulnerability, a period of lost time, stolen from the far more important business of waking life. This ancient suspicion has echoed through the centuries, contributing to our modern culture where sleep is often viewed as an inconvenience to be conquered or a sign of laziness. But science has dragged this mysterious state out of the shadows and into the light of the laboratory. And what it has revealed is a paradox that has puzzled researchers for decades. Why would evolution sanction a state that renders an organism incapable of gathering food, finding a mate, caring for its young, and, most critically, defending itself from attack? The pioneering sleep scientist Dr. Alan Rechtschaffen, who dedicated his life to this question, framed the evolutionary puzzle perfectly. He famously stated, quote, "If sleep doesn't serve some absolutely vital function, it is the biggest mistake evolution ever made." End quote. And modern science has only deepened our appreciation for this paradox. Neuroscientist Dr. Matthew Walker of the University of California, Berkeley, echoes this sentiment. Quote, "If sleep does not serve an absolutely vital function, then it is the biggest mistake the evolutionary process has ever made." End quote. Sleep is not a mistake. It is a masterstroke of biological design. It is not lost time, but rather the time where our minds and bodies are meticulously repaired, restored, and recalibrated. Over the next 2 hours, we will journey deep into this secret world. We will pull back the curtain on the sleeping brain and witness the incredible work being done in the dark. First, we will explore the very architecture of the night, journeying through the hidden cycles and stages of sleep that were completely unknown to us just a few generations ago. We will discover that sleep is not one state, but many, each with its own unique and vital purpose. Then we will shrink down to the cellular level to watch the brain's nocturnal symphony in action. We will see how memories from the day are replayed, sorted, and saved for the long term. And we will witness one of the most stunning discoveries in modern neuroscience, a deep cleaning system that power washes the brain, clearing out toxic debris that can lead to devastating neurological disease. We will also confront the dark side of this equation, the consequences of not sleeping. We will examine the silent epidemic of sleep deprivation that plagues our modern world and understand how it impacts every single aspect of our physical and mental well-being. And finally, we will empower you. Armed with a new respect for this nightly miracle, we will explore the practical, science-backed strategies you can use to reclaim your night and harness the life-changing power of a full and restorative sleep. This is not a story about wasting a third of your life. This is the story of how that third of your life makes the other 2/3 possible. So, settle in. Let the world outside fade away. The journey into the science of sleep begins now. Our journey into the architecture of the night begins not in the present day, but in a small, unassuming laboratory at the University of Chicago in 1953. For all of recorded history, the inner world of sleep was a complete black box. It was a philosophical concept, a mythological realm, But it was not a biological territory that could be mapped or measured. All of that was about to change. The man who lit the first torch in this darkness was Dr. Nathaniel Kleitman, a scientist wholly consumed by the rhythms of life. He was the world's first true sleep scientist. But the pivotal discovery came from his graduate student Eugene Aserinsky. Their primary tool was an early model electroencephalogram, or EEG, a cumbersome machine with a tangle of wires and sensitive amplifiers, designed to capture the faint electrical hum of the brain. The theory was that if the brain did anything at all during sleep, the EEG would see it. The process was painstaking. Night after night, Aserinsky would tape electrodes to the scalps and faces of sleeping subjects, starting with his own son, Armand, and watch as a mechanical pen scratched out the brain's electrical signals onto long scrolling rolls of paper. For long stretches of the night, the pen would trace slow, lazy, predictable waves. But then, Aserinsky noticed something that defied all contemporary understanding of sleep. For several minutes at a time, the boy's eyes would begin to dart back and forth frantically beneath his closed eyelids. Simultaneously, the EEG pen, which had been drawing the sleepy waves, would jolt to life, scribbling a fast, chaotic, low-amplitude pattern. It was a brainwave signature that looked almost identical to that of a person who was wide awake and intensely focused. The discovery was so counterintuitive that Kleitman was initially convinced it was an artifact from a faulty machine. But as they recorded more subjects, the pattern emerged again and again, undeniable. They had discovered a new paradoxical state of being, a brain that was furiously active while the body remained completely limp and asleep. They named it rapid eye movement sleep, or REM. This single discovery threw open the doors to the sealed world of the sleeping mind. It was the first clue that sleep was not a monolithic state of dormancy, but a dynamic and highly structured process. To truly appreciate what they had found, we must first understand the language the EEG allowed us to read. The brain's electrical chatter comes in different frequencies or waves, each corresponding to a different state of consciousness. When you are wide awake, alert, and engaged with the world, your brain produces fast, low-amplitude beta waves. They are the signature of active thought and problem-solving. As you relax and close your eyes, your brain waves begin to slow into a more rhythmic, higher amplitude pattern known as alpha waves. This is the signature of calm, restful wakefulness. As you begin to drift off into sleep, your brain shifts again into the even slower theta waves. This is the electrical signpost of light sleep and drowsiness. And finally, during the very deepest stages of sleep, the brain produces immense, slow-rolling high-amplitude waves known as delta waves. These are the signature of profound physical restoration and unconsciousness. The discovery of REM sleep, combined with this new ability to read the brain's electrical alphabet, gave scientists the tools they needed to finally draw a map of the night. It revealed that our slumber is a journey through a recurring cycle of different stages, each defined by its own unique brainwave signature, and each serving a profoundly different purpose. With this new electrical alphabet, we can finally begin to read the story that our brain writes every single night. It's a story told in cycles, a repeating 90-minute odyssey that takes us from the shores of wakefulness into the deepest abyss of sleep and back out again. Think of it as a great spiral staircase in a dark mansion. Throughout the night, we will descend and ascend this staircase 4 or 5 times. But this is not a story that stays the same. The way we sleep when we are young is profoundly different from the way we sleep when we are old. So as we walk down the stairs of each cycle, we will also walk along the arc of a human lifetime to see how the very architecture of our sleep is built, remodeled, and eventually begins to fade. Our descent begins at the top of the staircase in stage N1, the official entryway to sleep. As you lie down and your mind begins to quiet, the busy beta waves of active thought give way to the calmer, more rhythmic alpha waves of peaceful wakefulness. But the moment you tip over into sleep, the alpha waves vanish. They are replaced by the slower frequency of theta waves. This is stage NM1. It is a shallow, fragile state, a brief stop lasting only a few minutes. It is here we might experience the strange sensation of a hypnic jerk, that sudden jolt or feeling of falling as our waking motor control finally relinquishes its command. From here, we take a confident step down to the next level, stage N2. This is no longer a fragile state. This is the beginning of consolidated, true sleep. We spend the majority of our night here, about 50% of our total slumber. The theta waves continue, but they are now punctuated by 2 remarkable new signatures. The first are sleep spindles, short, powerful bursts of brain activity, like the after images of a camera flash in the dark. These spindles are now known to be instrumental in learning and memory, especially for cementing new motor skills. The second are K-complexes, huge, singular waves that rise and fall like a great swell in the ocean. These are the brain's bouncers, powerfully suppressing outside noise to protect our sleep from being disturbed. The density and efficiency of these features, especially the spindles, are a marker of a youthful plastic brain, and they change as we age. Now we descend further into the deepest and most restorative level of the mansion, stage N3, also known as deep sleep or slow wave sleep. Here, the brain waves transform into the majestic, slow-rolling delta waves. The brain is at its most synchronized and quiet. The body, however, is in the midst of its most vital repair work. It is during N3 sleep that the body releases growth hormone, repairs tissues, and bolsters the immune system. It is this stage, more than any other, that tells the story of our life. As children and teenagers, our brains are drenched in this powerful, deep sleep. It is the signature of growth and development, and it's why a teenager can seemingly sleep through a thunderstorm. Their brains produce vast quantities of N3 sleep. But as we move through our 20s and into middle age, a slow but dramatic change begins. The amount of deep N3 sleep we get each night starts to decline. By the time we reach our 70s and 80s, we may have lost 60 to 70% of the deep sleep we enjoyed in our youth. The great delta waves become a shadow of their former selves. This is not a trivial change. It is directly linked to many of the common complaints of aging. The feeling of not being refreshed upon waking, the increase in physical aches and pains, a less robust immune system, all of these can be traced back to the erosion of this deeply restorative physically essential stage of sleep. But sleep is a tale of two very different states. We have explored the deep, quiet, physically restorative world of NREM. Now, we must turn to its wild, paradoxical, and mentally regenerative sibling. We must explore the world of REM sleep and see how its own story unfolds across the arc of a lifetime. REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement, is also known as paradoxical sleep, and for good reason. If you were to look only at an EEG reading from someone in REM, you would swear they were wide awake. The brain bursts back to life with fast, chaotic beta waves, the very signature of active waking thought. The heart rate and blood pressure rise. Breathing becomes fast and shallow. The brain's consumption of energy skyrockets. Internally, it is a neurological tempest. Externally, however, the body is a picture of tranquility. In fact, it is more still than at any other point, because during REM sleep, we are placed under a spell of full-body paralysis. This state, called muscle atonia, is commanded by a specific region in the brainstem called the pons. Just before we enter REM, the pons flips a switch, sending a powerful signal down the spinal cord that inhibits every voluntary muscle in the body. It is a brilliant biological safeguard, a disconnect switch that ensures our physical body cannot act out the vivid and often bizarre narratives that our mind is experiencing. Because it is here, in this paradoxical theater, that we dream our most elaborate dreams. This is the stage for rich, emotional, cinematic storytelling, and it was Dr. William Dement, the Stanford researcher who first firmly linked REM to dreaming, who captured its essence with a sense of awe. In his words, quote, "Dreaming permits each and every one of us to be quietly and safely insane every night of our lives." End quote. Like in REM sleep, the story of our REM sleep is not the same throughout our lives. In fact, its arc is even more dramatic. A healthy adult spends about 20 to 25% of their night in this stage, but a newborn infant spends a staggering 50% of their sleep time in REM. Why would a baby with so little life experience to dream about need so much of this brain-activating sleep? The leading theory is that this intense REM activity in infancy acts as a form of auto-stimulation for the developing brain. It is the brain building itself. It runs its own genetic programs, testing circuits and forging the trillions of neural connections necessary to build a conscious mind. It is a dress rehearsal for life. As we move through childhood and adolescence, the proportion of REM sleep gradually declines, eventually settling at the stable adult level. And here is another remarkable finding. While our deep NREM sleep tragically fades with age, REM sleep remains remarkably well preserved, even late into life. This tells us that whatever functions REM sleep provides for us, and as we will soon discover, they are critical, they are functions that we need for our entire lifespan. The completion of this first REM stage marks the end of one full cycle, a journey of about 90 minutes. But the brain does not stop here. It immediately begins another cycle, and another, repeating this journey 4 or 5 times across the night. But the trip is different each time. The ratio of the stages changes dramatically. The first half of the night is dominated by NREM deep sleep, as the body prioritizes its physical repairs. But in the second half of the night, especially in the hours before you wake, the balance tips decisively. The periods of deep sleep vanish and are replaced by long, luxurious stretches of REM sleep. This is a critical point. If you go to bed at midnight and wake up at 4, you have deprived yourself of the vast majority of your REM sleep. You may have gotten a good portion of your physical restoration, but you have starved your brain of the sleep it needs for mental and emotional restoration. We have now mapped the architecture of the night and charted its course across a lifetime. We understand what sleep looks like, but this detailed map only makes the question of why more urgent. Why does the brain need this intricate repeating dance? Why must it replay memories? Why must it enter a state of paralysis to dream? The answers lie in the symphony of tasks performed within these stages, a symphony of memory, cleaning, and emotional healing that we will explore next. We have now mapped the architecture of the night and charted its course across a lifetime. We understand what sleep looks like, but this detailed map only makes the question of why more urgent. Why does the brain need this intricate repeating dance? The answers lie in the symphony of tasks performed within these stages, and the first movement of that symphony is dedicated to the art and science of memory. Every waking moment, we are deluged with information. Facts, faces, conversations, sights, sounds. A torrent of data flows into our brain. The brain's initial receiving dock for these new experiences is a structure shaped like a seahorse, tucked deep into the temporal lobes, called the hippocampus. Think of it as a temporary information inbox, or a USB stick. It is brilliant at acquiring new information rapidly, but it has a severely limited storage capacity. It was never designed for long-term residency. If the hippocampus were to simply keep collecting memories without a way to offload them, it would be functionally full within a single day, a state some scientists call cognitive saturation. We would essentially lose the ability to learn anything new. Sleep provides the elegant and essential solution. It is the nightly librarian that sorts, files, and transfers our memories for safe, long-term storage. This process happens primarily during the quiet, low-interference environment of NREM deep sleep. The powerful, slow delta waves of stage N3 create the perfect state for a crucial dialogue to begin between the hippocampus and the neocortex, the brain's vast, wrinkled hard drive. During this stage, the hippocampus begins to replay the neural signatures of the day's events, but at incredible speeds, sometimes 10 to 20 times faster than the original experience. But the brain is not a passive recording device. It is an intelligent editor. It doesn't just save everything, it selectively chooses which memories to strengthen and which to let fade. Experiences that are tagged with emotion or that are particularly relevant to our goals are prioritized for consolidation. Sleep sifts through the day's experiences, strengthening the important connections and actively pruning the trivial ones. It is a process of intelligent curation. While deep sleep is busy saving the facts and events of our lives, another stage is hard at work, honing our skills. The sleep spindles of stage N2, those short, powerful bursts of activity, are critical for locking in procedural memory or muscle memory. Imagine a pianist learning a difficult new passage of music. During the day, they practice with intense focus, their fingers clumsy and slow. That night, while they sleep, something remarkable happens. During stage N2, their brain reactivates the very same part of the motor cortex that controls the finger movements. The sleep spindles fire, and the brain practices the passage over and over again, strengthening and smoothing the neural pathway without the fingers ever moving. The next morning, the pianist sits down, and the passage that was so difficult the day before now flows with greater ease and accuracy. It feels like magic, but it is the meticulous, nightly work of the sleeping brain. Dr. Robert Stick Gold of Harvard Medical School, a leading researcher in this field, has demonstrated that sleep doesn't just strengthen memories. It can lead to new insights. He notes that sleep seems to allow the brain to test novel connections and discover hidden patterns in the information it has gathered. It's why we can sometimes wake up with the solution to a problem that seemed intractable the night before. Sleep gives us not just our past, but our future insights as well. So, sleep acts as our master librarian, saving our past and preparing us for our future. But this sophisticated mental work can only happen if the library itself is clean and well maintained. As it turns out, sleep is also the library's janitor, performing a nightly deep clean that is essential for the brain's very survival. The sleeping brain acts as our master librarian, meticulously curating our memories. But this sophisticated mental work can only happen if the library itself is clean and well maintained. For over a century, neuroscientists were faced with a profound and troubling mystery. The brain, at just 2% of our body mass, consumes over 20% of our energy. It is a biological furnace, and like any furnace, it produces a tremendous amount of waste. Every other organ in the body is serviced by a dedicated waste disposal network, the lymphatic system, which constantly drains away toxic metabolic byproducts. Yet, scientists could find no trace of this system within the brain. It was a paradox that made no sense. The most metabolically active, sensitive, and important organ in our body appeared to have no way to take out its own trash. The first clues to solving this mystery came from observing the clear liquid that bathes the brain, the cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF. Scientists knew it provided a protective cushion, but they suspected it did more. The breakthrough, however, had to wait for technology to catch up with theory. The invention of a technique called two-photon microscopy finally allowed researchers to peer deep inside the living, working brain of a mouse, watching the intricate dance of cells in real time. In 2012, a team led by Dr. Micah Nedergaard at the University of Rochester used this technology to watch what happened to the cerebrospinal fluid when the mouse was asleep versus when it was awake. What they saw was stunning, and it solved the century-old mystery in an instant. They discovered that during the day, the fluid flowed only around the brain's surface. But during the deepest stages of NREM sleep, a dramatic change occurred. The brain's glial cells, which act as the support staff for the neurons, suddenly began to shrink, some by as much as 60%. This cellular contraction opened up a network of channels and canals deep within the brain that had been squeezed shut during wakefulness. It was like the opening of a city's floodgates. Suddenly, cerebrospinal fluid was no longer just on the surface. It was being pumped deep into the brain tissue itself, power washing the intricate spaces between the neurons. This rush of fluid collected the metabolic waste of the day and flushed it out into the body's general circulation to be disposed of. They named this previously unknown process the glymphatic system. And what was the most important toxin being cleared away by this nightly deluge? A sticky waste protein called beta amyloid, the very same protein that, when it accumulates, clumps together to form the toxic plaques that are the hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. They also found it cleared away another protein called tau, which is also implicated in dementia. This discovery was a revelation. It provided a direct mechanical explanation for why sleep is so critical for brain health. It suggests that a chronic lack of deep N3 sleep night after night cripples this cleaning system, allowing these toxins to build up year after year, dramatically increasing the risk for neurodegenerative disease. It also explains the brain fog we feel after a sleepless night. Our brain is literally clogged with the uncleared waste from the previous day. The brain, it turns out, faces a fundamental energy trade-off. As Dr. Nedegard explains it, quote, "The brain has only limited energy at its disposal, and it appears that it must choose between two different functional states, awake and aware, or asleep and cleaning." End quote. It simply cannot do both at once. So, the sleeping brain is a librarian and a janitor, managing our knowledge and cleaning our physical hardware. It meticulously cares for the past and maintains the present. But its final and perhaps most elegant act is to prepare us for the future by healing the emotional wounds of the day. This is the work of the brain as an overnight therapist. The sleeping brain is a librarian and a janitor, managing our knowledge and cleaning our physical hardware. It meticulously cares for the past and maintains the present. But its final and perhaps most elegant act is to prepare us for the future by healing the emotional wounds of the day. This is the work of the brain as an overnight therapist, a function performed almost exclusively in the wild theater of REM sleep. Every day, we collect not just facts, but feelings. We experience moments of stress, conflict, embarrassment, and anxiety that leave a sharp emotional residue. If these feelings were to linger with their full, painful intensity, they would accumulate, coloring our perspective and leaving us in a state of chronic emotional reaction. To move forward with wisdom, we need a mechanism to separate the useful lessons from the painful emotional charge. This is the therapeutic work of REM sleep. During this stage, the brain begins to process the emotionally potent experiences of the day. Key emotional centers, like the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, or emotional gas pedal, are highly active, reactivating the feelings associated with those events. But here, the brain performs a truly remarkable chemical trick. It completely shuts off the production of a key stress-related neurochemical called noradrenaline. Think of noradrenaline as the brain's anxiety chemical. It is a major component of our fight-or-flight response. By removing it from the equation, the brain creates a unique, neurochemically safe space to reprocess difficult memories. It is the perfect therapeutic setting. The brain can replay the memory of a stressful event, but without the visceral, anxious, heart-pounding charge that originally came with it. It allows the more rational part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, to look at the memory, analyze it, and place it into a wider context, all without the amygdala screaming in panic. The result is a form of overnight emotional resolution. The informational memory remains. We don't forget what happened, but the painful, visceral emotion is stripped away. We go to bed with a raw, emotionally charged experience, and we wake up the next morning with the memory of that experience, but it no longer stings. It has been integrated into the story of our life, but its sharp edges have been smoothed away. This nightly therapy is what allows us to overcome daily emotional knocks and start each new day with a restored sense of calm and perspective. It is one of the most essential ingredients for good mental health. When we are deprived of REM sleep, this healing process cannot occur. The emotional charge of the day's events is carried over, unprocessed. This is why a lack of sleep makes us so emotionally volatile. Our amygdala becomes hyperreactive, causing us to overreact to even minor frustrations, and our prefrontal cortex loses its ability to regulate our impulses. We become all emotional gas pedal and no brake. So we see the sleeping brain in its three remarkable roles: the archivist of our past, carefully filing our memories; the cleaner of our present, diligently maintaining our neural hardware; and the therapist for our future, healing our emotional wounds. This nightly symphony is a masterpiece of self-preservation, a finely tuned process that sustains both mind and body. But what happens when the orchestra is disrupted? What happens when key players fail to show up night after night? To truly appreciate this gift, we must now confront the cacophony that results when sleep falters. Our journey now takes a sobering turn, away from the wonders of the sleeping brain and into the harsh reality of its neglect. For the majority of human history, our sleep was governed by the simple, powerful rhythm of the sun. But with the invention of the electric light bulb, we broke that rhythm. We waged a war on the night, and in doing so, we declared a war on our own biology. Today, the World Health Organization has declared a sleep loss epidemic throughout industrialized nations. In our quest for 24/7 productivity, we have stigmatized sleep, viewing it as a sign of laziness or a lack of ambition. We wear our exhaustion as a badge of honor, but science delivers a starkly different verdict. The evidence is now unequivocal. A lack of sleep is a slow-motion act of self-harm. The consequences begin after just one night of insufficient sleep. Your brain's ability to maintain focus plummets. Your attention span becomes a leaky sieve. The prefrontal cortex, the logical, rational CEO of your brain, begins to go offline. This leads to impulsivity, poor judgment, and a loss of emotional control. It is why, when you're tired, you are often irritable, moody, and prone to making decisions you later regret. But these immediate cognitive effects, as unpleasant as they are just the tip of the iceberg. The far more sinister consequences are happening deep within your body, silently accumulating night after night. Let's start with your immune system. During deep sleep, your body replenishes its army of natural killer cells. These are powerful immune agents that seek out and destroy dangerous foreign invaders, including cancerous cells. Research has shown that after just one single night of only 4 to 5 hours of sleep, the number of these critical anti-cancer cells in your body can drop by as much as 70%. This is a staggering immunological deficit, and it helps explain the clear links found between chronic sleep deprivation and an increased risk for several types of cancer. Consider your cardiovascular system. Deep sleep is a form of natural blood pressure medication. Each night, during stage N3 sleep, your heart rate slows and your blood pressure falls, giving your heart and blood vessels a much-needed period of rest and repair. When you shortchange your sleep, your blood pressure remains elevated for longer periods. This constant stress on your arteries is a primary driver of hypertension, significantly increasing your risk of heart attack and stroke. The damage continues in your metabolic system. Insufficient sleep wreaks havoc on your body's ability to manage blood sugar. It makes your cells less responsive to the hormone insulin, forcing your pancreas to work overtime to try and control your glucose levels. This state, known as insulin resistance, is the stepping stone to prediabetes and, eventually, full-blown type 2 diabetes. And if you have ever struggled with your weight, a lack of sleep may be the hidden culprit. Sleep controls two critical hormones that regulate your appetite. The first, leptin, signals to your brain that you are full. The second, ghrelin, signals that you are hungry. When you are sleep-deprived, your body produces less leptin and more ghrelin. Your brain is bombarded with a powerful hormonal signal that you are starving, even when you are not. This drives you to eat more and to crave unhealthy, high-sugar foods, creating a vicious cycle of weight gain. The evidence is undeniable. From cancer to heart disease, diabetes to obesity, sleep is not an optional luxury. It is a non-negotiable biological necessity, and neglecting it is one of the most destructive things you can do to your health. But the problem goes beyond simple, voluntary deprivation. For millions of people, the desire to sleep is there in full, but the ability to achieve it is gone, stolen by a collection of clinical disorders that hijack the night. The problem of sleep loss extends beyond a simple disregard for our biological needs. For tens of millions of people, sleep is not a choice they can make. It is a nightly battleground, a source of profound anxiety and frustration due to clinical sleep disorders. The most common of these is chronic insomnia. This isn't just an occasional bad night, but a persistent inability to fall asleep, or just as frequently, to stay asleep. The insomniac's experience is one of cruel irony. They are often exhausted, yet their mind refuses to switch off. They lie in bed while their thoughts race, watching the clock tick towards dawn with a growing sense of dread. This is a state of what scientists call hyperarousal. The brain's fight-or-flight system is stuck in the on position, flooding the body with the stress hormone cortisol, creating a tired but wired state that is the very antithesis of sleep. Then there is obstructive sleep apnea, a dangerous physical condition where the airway at the back of the throat repeatedly relaxes and collapses during the night. This chokes off the flow of air, causing the person to stop breathing, sometimes for up to a minute at a time. As oxygen levels in the blood plummet, the brain initiates a panic response, briefly jolting the person awake with a gasp or a snort to reopen the airway. This life-saving intervention can happen hundreds of times a night, completely destroying the restorative architecture of sleep, often without the sufferer having any conscious memory of the events. Each apnea event places immense stress on the cardiovascular system, triggering a surge in blood pressure. It is a leading and often undiagnosed cause of hypertension and dramatically increases the risk of suffering a fatal heart attack or stroke during the night. Less common, but no less debilitating, is narcolepsy. This is a neurological disorder where the boundary between wakefulness and sleep is unstable and porous. It's caused by the brain's loss of a key neurochemical called orexin, which acts like a stabilizing switch to keep us firmly awake. Without it, sufferers experience overwhelming waves of daytime sleepiness and can suffer from sleep attacks, falling asleep suddenly and uncontrollably in the middle of daily activities. Many also experience cataplexy, a shocking and sudden loss of muscle control triggered by strong emotions like laughter or surprise. The cost of this collective sleep debt, whether from deliberate deprivation or clinical disorders, is staggering, and it ripples out through every layer of our society. Drowsy driving is a primary cause of major traffic accidents around the world, responsible for hundreds of thousands of injuries and deaths each year. A driver operating on 4 hours of sleep has a crash risk comparable to someone driving with a blood alcohol level well above the legal limit. In fact, some of the worst disasters in modern history, including the Chernobyl nuclear catastrophe and the Exxon Valdez oil spill, have been directly linked to critical errors made by sleep-deprived individuals. The economic toll is measured in the hundreds of billions of dollars annually through lost productivity, workplace accidents, and increased healthcare expenditures. A tired workforce is an unhealthy, uninspired, and inefficient workforce. We have engineered a culture that is fundamentally at odds with our biology. As Dr. Matthew Walker so powerfully states, quote, "Human beings are the only species that deliberately deprive themselves of sleep for no apparent gain." End quote. The picture we have painted is bleak. A society silently suffering from a self-inflicted wound, the consequences of which are only now coming into the full, harsh light of scientific scrutiny. But it is not hopeless. We are not powerless in the face of this epidemic. The science that has revealed the problem also illuminates the path toward a solution. We have the knowledge to heal our relationship with sleep. The final part of our journey will not be about the problems, but about the solutions. It's time to learn how we can reclaim our nights, and in doing so, reclaim our health, our creativity, and our vitality. Our journey through the science of sleep, from the discovery of its hidden architecture to the stark consequences of its neglect, has brought us here, to a place of knowledge and empowerment. We have seen that sleep is not a passive void, but an active and intricate state of profound self-renewal. The dark side of this story is not meant to frighten, but to illuminate the immense power we have to change our lives, starting tonight. We do not have to be passive victims in the sleep loss epidemic. We can become active participants in our own well-being. The science that has revealed the problem has also given us the solutions, a set of principles often referred to as sleep hygiene. This isn't a rigid list of rules, but a guide to creating the ideal conditions for your brain and body to perform the miraculous work they are designed to do. The single most important principle is regularity. Go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time, no matter what. That applies to weekdays and weekends. The reason is that your body runs on a 24-hour internal clock, your circadian rhythm. Regularity is the anchor for this clock. It helps your body learn when to anticipate sleep and when to prepare for wakefulness, regulating the release of all the key hormones and neurochemicals we've discussed. It is the foundation upon which good sleep is built. Second, we must learn to manage light. Light is the primary signal that sets our internal clock. We need bright light during the day, especially in the morning. Getting even 10 to 15 minutes of direct sunlight upon waking helps to signal to your brain that the day has begun, shutting off melatonin production and boosting daytime alertness. But in the evening, we must do the opposite. We must signal the arrival of darkness. An hour before your scheduled bedtime, dim the lights in your home, and most critically, put away the screens. The powerful blue light emitted by our phones, tablets, and computers is particularly effective at tricking our brain into thinking it's still daytime, powerfully suppressing the release of melatonin and delaying the onset of sleep. Treat the last hour of your day as a twilight period, a time to wind down. Third, pay attention to temperature. To initiate sleep, your body's core temperature needs to drop by about 1 degree Celsius, or 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit. A bedroom that is too warm is one of the most common barriers to good sleep. The ideal temperature is around 18.5 degrees Celsius, or 65 degrees Fahrenheit. You can hack this system by taking a warm bath before bed. The bath itself raises your body temperature, but it's the rapid drop in temperature you experience when you get out that signals to your brain that it is time for bed. We must also be mindful of what we consume. Many of us rely on caffeine to get through the day, but it can stay in our system for far longer than we realize. Caffeine works by blocking the receptors for a chemical called adenosine, which builds up throughout the day to create sleep pressure. By blocking adenosine, caffeine masks our tiredness. With a half-life of 5 to 7 hours, a cup of coffee you drink at 3 in the afternoon can still be having a significant impact on your brain at 10 o'clock at night, making it harder to fall asleep. It's wise to cut off all caffeine after midday. Alcohol is perhaps the most misunderstood sleep aid. While a glass of wine might help you relax and fall asleep faster, it is not a friend to your slumber. Alcohol is a sedative, but sedation is not sleep. As your body metabolizes the alcohol, it creates a rebound effect, fragmenting your sleep in the second half of the night, and most destructively, it is one of the most powerful suppressors of REM sleep that we know of. You may be unconscious, but you are not getting the restorative, therapeutic sleep you need. Finally, change your mindset. Do not lie in bed for hours, trying to force sleep to come. This creates a powerful mental association between your bed and a state of anxious wakefulness. If you can't fall asleep after about 20 minutes, get up, go to another dimly lit room, and do something relaxing. Read a book, listen to calm music, until you feel sleepy again, and only then return to bed. The goal is to protect the sanctity of your bedroom as a place of rest. The future of sleep science will bring even more personalized tools, wearable technology and therapies that can help us optimize our individual sleep patterns. but the core principles will remain the same because they are written into our fundamental biology. We have come to the end of our journey. We began by asking what sleep is and why it's important. We now know the answer. It is the brain's master class in memory consolidation. It is a deep cleaning sanitation system. It is a nightly session of emotional therapy. It is the foundation of our immune system, our metabolic health, and our cardiovascular vitality. After reviewing all the evidence, we are left with a profound and unsettling conclusion, best captured by Dr. Matthew Walker. Quote, "Human beings are the only species that deliberately deprive themselves of sleep for no apparent gain." End quote. Sleep is the single most effective thing we can do to reset our brain and body health each day. It is your life support system, a nightly investment in your own physical and mental wellness. It is not a debt to be paid or a chore to be completed. It is a gift you can give yourself every single night, an act of profound self-care and the key to a longer, healthier, and more vibrant life. Sleep is the third pillar of health, standing equal alongside diet and exercise. Yet it is the one we have been most willing to sacrifice. The science is now clear. That sacrifice is no longer tenable. It is your life support system, a nightly investment in your own physical and mental wellness. It is not a debt to be paid or a chore to be completed. It is a gift you can give yourself every single night, an act of profound self-care and the key to a longer, healthier, and more vibrant life. The evidence is in. The case is closed. The damage caused by our war on sleep is irrefutable. But this is not an obituary for our health and vitality. It is an ironic wake-up call, because armed with this knowledge, we have the power to change the verdict. We have the ability to make a different choice. It's time to learn how we can reclaim the night. We have journeyed through the darkest consequences of sleep loss, but this is not an obituary for our health. It is a wake-up call, because armed with the knowledge of what sleep is and why it is so vital, we have the power to change the verdict. We can learn to reclaim our nights. This final act is not about problems, but about solutions. It is a practical guide to working with your biology, not against it. This is the toolkit for reclaiming your sleep. The foundation is not a pill, a gadget, or a secret technique. It is a single, powerful principle: regularity. Go to bed at the same time and, crucially, wake up at the same time. This applies to every single day, including weekends. The reason is that your sleep is governed by a master clock deep within your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This tiny cluster of 20,000 neurons acts as the conductor of your body's entire circadian orchestra, dictating the rhythmic release of every hormone and the timing of every bodily process. Regularity is the single most powerful signal you can send to this master clock, anchoring it in time and allowing it to run its life-sustaining schedule with precision. The second pillar is light. If regularity is the anchor for your clock, light is the hand that sets it. We are creatures of the sun, and our brains are exquisitely sensitive to light signals. Getting direct sunlight exposure for 10 to 20 minutes within the first hour of waking is a powerful trigger that tells your master clock the day has officially begun. It slams the brakes on melatonin production and sets a timer, for when melatonin should rise again in the evening. Conversely, we must embrace darkness to invite sleep. In our modern world, we are bathed in the blue frequency light from our phones, televisions, and home lighting. This specific wavelength of light is uniquely effective at hitting the photosensors in our eyes that speak directly to our internal clock, tricking it into believing it's still midday. This powerfully suppresses melatonin and pushes sleep further away. The most practical piece of sleep advice for the 21st century is to create a twilight hour. For the last 60 minutes before bed, dim the lights and put away all screens. Allow your brain to receive the ancient signal of darkness that it needs to begin the cascade of sleep. The third biological pillar is temperature. To successfully initiate sleep, your body's core temperature needs to drop by about 1 to 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Your brain initiates this drop by sending blood to the surface of your skin, especially your hands and feet, radiating heat away from your core. This is why a bedroom that is too warm is a major obstacle to sleep. The ideal temperature for most people is around 18.5 degrees Celsius or 65 degrees Fahrenheit. You can supercharge this process with a simple tool, a hot bath or shower before bed. This may seem counterintuitive, but the warm water draws blood to the surface of your skin. When you get out, the rapid drop in your core body temperature as the heat radiates away is a powerful signal to the brain, telling it that the journey into sleep should begin. These three pillars, regularity, light, and temperature, are the non-negotiable biological foundations for good sleep. They are the ways we speak to our ancient internal clock in a language it understands. But in our modern world, managing our biology is only half the battle. We must also learn to manage the primary enemy of sleep that lives within our own minds, a racing, anxious, and overstimulated brain. We have tuned our biology to the great natural rhythms of light, dark, and temperature, but for many of us, the greatest obstacle to sleep is not external. It is internal. Our minds, revved up by the stresses of the day, can refuse to power down even when our bodies are exhausted. This is why the final piece of the toolkit involves skillfully managing our own minds. You cannot simply command your brain to sleep. You must create the conditions that allow sleep to emerge naturally. The key is to create a wind-down routine, a dedicated buffer zone of at least 30 to 60 minutes that separates the identity of your busy, problem-solving daytime self from your calm, sleep-ready, nighttime self. This routine should be a consistent set of relaxing activities. Reading a physical book under dim light is a classic and effective choice. Journaling can be a powerful tool, allowing you to offload the anxieties and to-do lists from your mind onto the page so they don't circle endlessly in your head. Gentle stretching, listening to calm music, or practicing mindfulness and meditation can help guide your nervous system away from the fight or flight state and into the rest and digest state that precedes sleep. The specific activity matters less than the consistency of the routine itself. But what if you do everything right and still find yourself wide awake at 3 in the morning, your mind racing? The advice here is deeply counterintuitive, but critically important. Get out of bed. If you have been awake for more than 20 minutes, do not stay there tossing and turning. This only teaches your brain to associate your bed with a state of frustrated, anxious wakefulness. Instead, get up, go to a different room, and keep the lights as dim as possible. Read a dull book or do a quiet, non-stimulating activity. Only when you feel the wave of sleepiness return should you go back to bed. This helps reestablish your bed as a sanctuary for sleep, and sleep alone. Finally, we must be honest about the substances that we use. Caffeine, the world's most popular stimulant, works by cleverly hijacking your brain's sleepiness signal. It blocks the receptors for a chemical called adenosine, which builds up all day, creating sleep pressure. With a half-life of up to 7 hours, a cup of coffee at 2 in the afternoon can still be blocking a quarter of your adenosine receptors at midnight, artificially wiring you awake. And alcohol, perhaps the most misunderstood sleep drug, is not a sleep aid. It is a sedative. While it may help you fall asleep faster, the sleep it produces is not natural. As your body metabolizes it, it creates a rebound effect that fragments your sleep with numerous awakenings, and most destructively, it is one of the most potent suppressors of vital REM sleep that we know. We have come to the end of our long journey together. We began with a simple question: what is sleep? We've discovered it is not a state of nothingness, but a world teeming with activity. We have explored its intricate architecture, from the deepest valleys of NREM to the paradoxical theater of REM. We have witnessed the brain's nightly symphony as it acts as a librarian for our memories, a janitor for our physical health, and a therapist for our emotions. We confronted the devastating consequences of its neglect, and we have now armed ourselves with the practical science-backed tools to reclaim it. The knowledge is now yours. The choice is now yours. Sleep is not an indulgence or a luxury. It is the third pillar of health, standing equal alongside diet and exercise. It is the foundation upon which our physical vitality, our mental resilience, and our emotional wisdom are built. As Dr. Matthew Walker so eloquently states, quote, "Sleep is the single most effective thing we can do to reset our brain and body health each day." End quote. It is your life support system, a nightly act of intelligent self-care. It is not a debt to be paid or a chore to be completed. It is a gift you can and should give to yourself every single night. Good night, sleep well, and thank you so much for your interest in this topic, both from me, your brain, and your body. Now, we travel to the beaches of Costa Rica to continue our sleep and aid in our peaceful dreams.